Welcome everybody to this World Satsanga held on the 28th of October 2017 in conjunction with Kevin Moore and The Moore Show. And again, I'm thanking Kevin for all his hard work that he's been doing on his own work, and of course helping me by additionally broadcasting the World Satsanga on his own YouTube website as well, which is fantastic. Also, I noticed that his own work about going and creating a documentary about individuals who work with the energetics, it's called they call us channelers, is going well, and it's been well supported by crowdfunding via Indiegogo. So that's a project that is well required and is going to go ahead, and Kevin's working on it and on travelling to the locations he needs to go to meet people right now. Unfortunately, I'm one of the individuals who is interviewed to be on this documentary, this film, the short film, to indicate that there are people who are seeing more of the greater reality than meets the normal physical eye. Okay, so let's go through the agenda for this particular satsanga. I'm going to go through a question I didn't think I answered fully in the last satsanga, and that is, what is the true sentient self, and what is its relationship with the true energetic self? So I'm going to go into some detail with that and try and explain a bit more about it, about what the true sentient self is. And then we've got a whole group of questions which should probably last about 30 minutes, maybe 40. And then the end of meet meditation is to connect with the true sentient self. And really it's to help us visualize ourselves being the sentience that it is, that is us, rather than us considering ourselves as just being an energetic being, because that's one of the things that holds us in a certain level of understanding. If we start to consider ourselves as being one thing rather than another, then we start to see ourselves as in a limiting way rather than a continuing expansive way. Okay, so what is the true energetic self, and what is the true sentient self? Well, the true energetic self, or TES, is a combination of sentience and energy. And when the source individualized various different units of its own sentience and energy, it individualized those parts of its sentience that was already occupying an area of energy within its own self, as it were. And so the sentience was then naturally associated with what I'm calling a body. It's not a human body or anything else. It's a group of energies or a body of energies that it uses to experience things with. And the sentience itself, with the body of energies, experiences the multiversal environment that the source created to experience, learn and evolve on behalf of itself and on behalf of the source, and ultimately on behalf of the origin. And so the sentience, together with its body of energies, experiences those energies associated with the multiverse and the different environments that are associated with the multiverse, these different universes within the multiverse that are associated with different frequential levels, by being part of those frequential levels, by evolving and increasing the frequency, and therefore being able to place itself within those frequencies and experience those frequencies in the way that they're best experienced, by being part of that particular environment that's supported by those frequencies. And so that's the reason why the sentience is associated with energy, and that's why I'm told to call what we are in our operational sense, whilst we are part of this particular evolutionary cycle, classifying ourselves as energetic beings, or a true energetic self is basically this combination of sentience and energy. But in reality, though, we are just the sentience, because the energy itself can be any particular energy that's within the confines of the volume, if you want to call it that, of that which is the source. So in essence, our sentience isn't particularly or specifically associated with the body of energy that it was originally given by source. It can move around, it can detach itself from that body of energy and move around and commandeer another body of energy or body of energies to be able to experience that particular location within the multiverse as it wants to, or not, as the case may be. So the true sentient self is sentience, is pure sentience. It's sentience which is detached from the energetic side. The true energetic self is a combination of sentience and energy. The true sentient self is just sentience with no attachment to energy. So when we talk about the true sentient self, that is the basis, that's the raw basis of what we are, sentience. If you want to call it intelligence or consciousness or beingness or whatever, then you can use those words. But the sentience is, in effect, the part of us which is experiencing things, evolves, considers, learns, creates, understands the creation, modifies the creation, looks for the results from that creativity, and moves forwards in an evolutionary way as a result of that. So the sentience is the thinking, being, considering, creating, modifying, learning, understanding, evolving and progressing part of what we are. The energy side from the true energetic self is simply a vehicle that the sentience uses to be able to do that. So the energy on its own is specifically just that, energy. It doesn't do anything unless it's gone through another process where similar or like energies can coalesce together and create basic levels of intelligence, which then seek out other energies that have got basic levels of intelligence and group together to create a bigger intelligence, and then go through an evolution process where sentience can be created as a result of similar or like energies working or grouping together. That's a different way of getting to the point of sentience, and that level of sentience in effect is classified as a being rather than an entity. An entity is created through the individualization of sentience and energy directly from source, whereas a being is a process of evolution, of what you could call Darwinian evolution, if you want to call it that, from basic raw energy up to the coalition of or attraction of similar or like energies that eventually becomes intelligence, awareness, creative, and all these different things that gets it up to the level of sentience. This is described in The Origin Speaks, by the way, close on towards the end of the book, about probably around the middle 300th page mark. So it's worthwhile looking at that if you want to understand that process of how an energy can become sentient. I'm going to describe, not now, but in the next Satsanga, the process that allows a being to become an entity. So you have to wait about, can a being become an entity? And the answer is yes, it can, but it needs to go through a number of different things to achieve that. And I'll describe that as part of the opening lecture, so to speak, in November's Satsanga. Okay, so in essence, the true sentient self is what we really are. The true energetic self is the sentience of what we are with a vehicle to experience, learn and evolve the environments, or the environment supported by the multiverse that's around us, the multiversal environment that's created by source. So if you think of it in terms of that, and in the old days, there was a thought process there where we as spirits, if you want to call it that, were considered to be pure thought. And that's a reasonable description, I feel, of what sentience is. It's pure thought. It is pure state of beingness, not a being, but an entity that is in its own self-awareness and is working and experiencing and evolving at the same time. So we have this situation where we do have thoughts about what we are in spirit, that we're energy beings and we're spirit or with pure thought, but what I need to do is separate it out. An energy being or an energy entity is basically a true energetic self that's evolved or been individualized and has got a body of energy. The true energetic self, what we sometimes call pure thought in sort of old metaphysical speak, is the sentience, is the true essence of what we are. It's not the energy, it's the sentience, because the sentience can detach itself from the energy and move to another body or group of energies to experience, learn and evolve within a particular environment that is associated with a location within the multiverse. So I hope that explains it somewhat, because it's important to know that we are expanding in our understanding of who and what we are, and how we're moving forwards with this. And if we limit ourselves to thinking that we're energy, then we can't really sort of progress beyond that. But if we think of ourselves as pure sentience, then there isn't any limitations associated with energy and frequency. And this is an important thing, because we are actually beyond energy and frequency. We're beyond dimension, subdimensions, dimensions, zones, continuums, and the rest of the structure associated with the source and the origin. Because sentience is above and beyond the, if you want to call it that, the structure of what is being used to experience, learn, and evolve. Okay, well, I hope that explains it in more detail, and it's something that, in real terms, we should all consider and work with, and help us to unlock our limitations in thought, so to speak, and become the sentience, or the sentient individual that we are, rather than the energy being, or the energy entity that has a limitation based upon the demarcation of what we think we are. Okay, so let's have a look at the questions now. There's quite a lot of questions here. I'm going to read it out, although there will be the usual transcription, which is important. I'm sitting in rather a creaky chair, so it's an antique chair, so you have to forgive me if you hear a few creaks. It's not my bones. It is in fact the chair. Okay, so let's have a look at these questions. The first one is really about health, and the question goes like this: I would like to hear your thoughts about eating disorders, for example, anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and binge eating and obesity in humans. Do they have an energetic basis, such as first or second chakra imbalance? Or is it to do with the soul not wanting to be here in human form? Or is it the soul wanting to experience another extreme of experience, or the chance to overcome it? Or a newer evolved hybrid child with lesser energy needs but of a different energy set? Or a breatharian? So what is the okay? So the next question, what is the reason for the epidemic of overweight or obese people in our society now? I'll come to that in a moment. Really, it's all about experience. It's a psycho-spiritual piece of programming that is part of our life plan, is to understand and experience certain conditions. Now, it's important to note that things that we don't like as human beings, we choose quite freely when we're disincarnate, because it doesn't hold the same level of abhorrence to us when we disincarnate than it does when we are disincarnate. We like to be able to see, experience, and learn and evolve, of course, from everything that that is available to us within these particular multiversal environments, and the physical universe that represents the low frequencies of the multiversal environment. So anything that is something that gives us a chance to learn, experience, and maybe overcome is something that we can use to evolve through. And so we do have a number of individuals who come in who particularly want to experience different diseases or psychological or psycho-spiritual conditions, with a view to either experiencing them full stop and not overcoming them and allowing themselves to go through a downward spiral, or to overcome them and stay as they are, or move upwards. So they are part of a plan sometimes, but also they're part of a psycho-spiritual programming that is associated with certain desires to conform. We have individuals who feel that they need to be a certain size and shape and form factor, and they will do anything from a psychological perspective to create that condition. And so, in effect, there becomes a psycho-spiritual programming there, which means that individual wants to be able to conform to a preconceived thought form factor that it thinks others will like. And this is all about wanting to conform and be part of a group of individuals who love each other. I mean, this is why we have people grouping together to watch football matches. They all feel this camaraderie, but moreover they feel the complex emotions and thought processes associated with being in communion as well. And this desire to be liked and loved is part of this desire to be in communion. And so there's another part of this reasons why people have eating disorders, because it's something to do with them wanting to be liked by certain groups of individuals, or be desirable to certain people as well. To be loved as well, it's all part of that. So in real terms, it can be associated with wanting to be in a state of communion or in a state of partnership with somebody, but it's moreover it just tends to experience different things. I'm not picking up anything about whether it's to do with the hybrid children, such as the rainbow, indigo or crystal children, and the various different combinations of those energies together being a reason, or even a breatharian. Breatharians are those individuals who work on various different advanced yogic techniques and can pull in energy and recharge and nourish their bodies through the energy coming through the chakras. And so they don't need to eat physical food because they've overcome the need to have physical food. They're more in control of their human form in all these different frequencies. So it's more to do with experience and more to do with wanting to be in communion. Okay. Breatharians are people who are, in general, are not thinking in a higher thought process and starting to realise that the low frequencies of food is what keeps them low frequency, basically. Epidemic of overweight or obese people in our society now is generally as a result of fast food. People are becoming a bit lazy in terms of preparing freshly picked, freshly bought, freshly produced, cooked or prepared food. And so the food that we get is usually pre-packed, preserved in some way, and this preservation in effect affects the way in which the human form metabolizes the food, and a lot of it sticks to us. So we start to grow or collect a lot of fatty deposits as a result of it, because the body can't metabolize it, and it tends to metabolize fats that are available from natural foods faster than it does these foods that are preserved. So the preserved fats stay within us because they're difficult to metabolize, and therefore we don't lose that particular weight, as it were, particularly quickly, because the body will metabolize the energies of the food associated with more natural foods first. So if you have for instance, a pre-packed ready meal that you microwave, and you eat that, and there's a level of fat that's absorbed by the body, if you then go out and eat very, very healthy, and you have a raw salad or raw vegetables such as broccoli and cauliflower and carrots, etc., and you eat those, if you expend energy later through exercise, the body will naturally use that energy first, rather than the energy from the ready meal that's been microwaved, because of the preservatives that are there that are making it difficult for it to metabolize. So that's the major reason for the overweight individuals today. Okay. There's also a bit of a psycho-spiritual aspect that people really are getting a little bit lazy, and that's associated with the low frequencies that we're going through. As we drop more down the frequencies, people get more lazier in terms of their ability to think about things that are good for them, and they tend to have lots of things that are bad for them. Okay, so what's the best approach to therapy in these conditions? Is it pharmaceutical drugs, psychotherapy, energy healing, spiritual counselling, or other methods? It's certainly not drugs. It's more likely to be a mixture of psycho-spiritual therapy, which is you could potentially call spiritual counselling, and energy healing. And the objective would be to change the psycho-spiritual programming for people, so that they start to change the way they think and behave and act in terms of the energies that they gain through physical means, i.e. eating physical foods. And there's another health-related question here from US. US is the wonderful person who does the transcripts for us, by the way, so thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. What is the reason behind opioid epidemic or crisis in the United States? Opioids are drugs that stimulate the brain's opiate receptors. Some are made from opium and others are semi-synthetic or completely synthetic. They are prescribed as painkillers for chronic pain. And now there's about 100 people die of opioid overdoses per day. more than deaths via gun violence, which is also rampant in the US. Again, is it to do with our overall frequency still going down, and when will we turn around? Is it addiction or something that some souls wanted to experience and potentially recover from? Or is it to do with profiteering by big pharmaceutical companies and medical community, or all of the above and more? Yes, it is all of the above, basically. It's a whole bunch of those things. In essence, it's a thought process. We want to get a quick fix. We don't want to go through the process of fixing ourselves or working on ourselves and our thought processes to be able to remove that which is causing us pain, by allowing ourselves to detach from pain, so detaching ourselves from the physical aspect of what we are. Pain can be removed simply by detaching the consciousness from the focal point of the area of pain and thinking of something else. For example, how many of us have been running or cycling or swimming or walking, and going somewhere, and then thought about something? So we've been daydreaming, for instance, and we've been concentrating on something else, and we've suddenly come out of the daydream or the thought process, and we found out we've moved a long way. And we do it in cars as well, by the way, and motorbikes, which is not so good. So, and it's to do, and that's because we're so engrossed in this other thought process that we forget our physical condition. And so, even though we might be exercising vigorously, for instance, on a bicycle or running, we remove ourselves, remove our consciousness from this this focal point of the pain associated with exercise, or the pain associated with a particular issue that we've got. And so we can use those sorts of methods to remove ourselves, to detach ourselves from any pain. And also we can work on healing ourselves as well. But in real terms, it's to do with low frequency thoughts, behaviours and actions, and again, laziness associated with it. But also it's to do with being associated with addiction and experiencing addiction, and sometimes not coming out of addiction, but also wanting to move forwards and recover from that addiction as well. By the way, if you hear a little cat bell, it's because my other cat is here and he decided he wants some more food. So I might have to have a little break in a moment and go and get his huge bowl of food that he has, because he's quite a greedy little animal, aren't you? You like to have lots of food. So, and again, there's the thought process surrounding the profiteering by big pharmaceutical companies and the medical community. The quick fix routine. Have this pill, it'll sort you out. The medicinal compound, the panacea of sorting a problem out and recovering from it without having to do real work. People in a low frequency condition start to become lazy in their thought processing and their actions as a result of it. And so, rather than wanting to work hard to do something, they want the quick fix. And so people are quite happy to, if they've got a lot of people in a queue at their doctor's practice, it's easier for them to spend 5 minutes and say, take this pill. And by the way, the pharmaceutical company will make a profit out of it as well. And they sometimes push this. Than it is to say, spend more time with the patient and say, actually, what you need to do is this, and this. And this is a program for doing it, and come back in 3 or 4 weeks and let me know how you've done. That takes a lot of time and a lot of extra determination by the individual, and a lot of time by the doctor as well. So that's why we do get on the pill route. It's a low frequency, easy, lazy way of doing things that is associated with low frequency. Okay, cat having been fed, and now with his head well and truly in his physical low frequency food, we'll go on to the next question. And it says, hi Guy, if time is an illusion, then it seems that there will be no sequence to events, so they will occur at the same time, or the same frame or event. If so, why is it that we experience events in sequence? It's because we're in a low frequency environment, and because we're in a low frequency environment, and we are detached from our true energetic self, the combination of sentience and energy, we aren't able to operate on a higher frequency. And when we can't operate on a higher frequency, we can't observe things in the complete functional manner that we're supposed to. So we see things as a series of events rather than a collective of events. Now, as we see things in events in the sequence, we see the sequence of going from A to B, B to C, C to D, and it's simply a function of being low frequency and of being in a position where we are locked in this low frequency and unable to move to a higher frequency where things do show themselves in their true nature, so to speak. So we see things because in sequence of events because it's associated with that with low frequency, and also it's part of the constraints and the functions of the physical universe being low frequency, that we experience things in a way which are not holistic, so to speak. They're not particularly available to us in anything other than a series of events or a sequence of events that are linear. We see things in a linear fashion because that's the only way we can see things, we can experience things. That's what it is. So, next bit is, if we indeed experience a life review upon leaving the body, and if time is an illusion and what we are experiencing in this life is event space, then is it possible that we are experiencing this life is actually a life review? That's a very good question. And in actuality, if you look at it from the bigger perspective, then we are experiencing this life, previous lives, future lives, the life reviews, the analysis of the lives, the working with the guides and helpers, the working with the other individual souls or aspects of true energetic souls and other true energetic souls to look at other incarnated experiences and other experiences within different aspects of the multiverse, all concurrently as well. So everything should be considered to be experienced concurrently, rather than just saying that are we actually experiencing just a life review. So in actuality, we're experiencing everything. So we probably can say that one particular aspect of what I just said would be that, yes, we could be experiencing a life review, but in actual fact, if we go from the higher perspective, we're experiencing everything concurrently anyway. It's a very good question, that, and it's slightly limiting because it's saying that we're experiencing one thing at a time, but we're not experiencing everything at a time, which I know this particular individual, WP, understands. So it's good for other people to understand that, if we consider one thing from a bigger picture, we have to consider everything in the bigger picture and not just isolate one particular item in terms of concurrent experience rather than linear experience. Okay. Next part of it is, if we are here to accrue evolutionary content and time is an illusion, then all such content is already known and has already been accrued. If so, what's the point of it all? The point of it is to be within the points of accrual and experience them. Be in the thick of it, so to speak. To be in the point where there is no observation of what is to be, what could be, what should be, what has been, what will be, and what the possibilities are associated with it. So it's to do with experiencing exactly linearity and being in that linearity. And our natural position or a natural function is to, in effect, be in everything concurrently. And so being in everything concurrently is one particular experience, what we naturally are. But being in something linearly is divorcing ourselves from a natural condition and is a harder position to experience. And so we do it to experience, basically, to experience a limitation. And that's the point of it, basically. And the next one is, if time is an illusion, then how are we to think about the thermodynamic concept of entropy, i.e. the degradation of the matter and energy in the universe to an ultimate state of inert uniformity, as entropy seems to be the function of time. The human body experiences entropy in the form of aging, but I'm not sure if there is no time. But how so if there is no time? The human body experiences entropy because we are programmed to experience entropy. everything we see, do, hear and experience whilst we are incarnate is programming us to kill our human body, to make it grow from being young to adolescent, to adult maturity, to middle age, to decrepitude, because everything tells us that that's what's got to happen. So we program our human body to do that. The thermodynamic concept of entropy is limited to experiencing the physical universe in the first three frequencies. Scientists call it the first three dimensions, but in my understanding, it's the first three frequencies. And so what we see is matter either being created or energy being created, and then experiencing some level of transformation. For instance, a chemical reaction or an energetic reaction that creates, something and then disappears because it's spent, it's burnt out. But what we don't experience at this particular level, or frequency level, is that matter changes and goes into a different state in a different frequential level. So there is no entropy as such. There is just conversion from one state to another, from one frequency to another. And again, this function of entropy is based upon the observation of what we can see, experience with our current physical means of detecting things, which is also the human eye and all of our telescopes and everything else, and scientific instruments. But it doesn't take into account higher frequential levels where things change into. So all we see is things being created and disappearing, and that's a function of linearity, and therefore a function of what we would call time, rather than a function of everything being concurrently available in the same space, but changing its form or changing its state. Okay, so I hope that's answered that particular question. Let's go on to the next question from JM. So these questions from JM are basically surrounding the texts from the AND dialogues. And the question is on page 19 of the AND dialogues: what are the frequencies that are even lower than those currently experienced by incarnates? In my understanding, it was my understanding that humans operate in the lowest frequencies of the physical universe. And so what are the frequencies below our lower frequencies, and what sort of beings inhabit these frequencies? In brackets, I assume us human. And the person asking the question said, I used to practice sending light to the hellish regions around the earth, and I wondered if my light work had any effect on other beings, perhaps in the lower frequencies. Well, basically the human form is created through the use of 10 frequency sets that are part of and concurrent with the frequencies that are used within the multiverse, but specifically within the physical universe. And the gross physical aspect is the first three frequencies. And although we are currently, although we're dropping down the frequencies, slightly above the third frequency level, because we don't specifically jump up from one frequency to another per se, we go through sub-frequencies. There are sort of sub-frequencies below the third, so there's sub-frequencies below the third to the second, the sub-frequencies between the second and first, and the sub-frequencies between the first and what we would call the zero level in a sort of linear way. Although, again, there is no such thing as linearity, but this is just an example to help us understand. But in essence, what these things are people who are, or frequencies that are specifically low, where we don't consider anything that is above and beyond our gross physicality. So people who are being spiritual or metaphysical or trying to understand more of the greater reality wouldn't even think about things that are spiritual, metaphysical, or of a higher conceptual thought process. And so these are what you would call individuals who work in lower frequencies. So it's not specifically lower than the third. I wouldn't say there's many people who are lower than third, because in essence, we're all sort of in the first three frequencies, because that's how the gross physical function of the human body, the human form, is created. But what we are is we tend to observe the ways we think, behave, and act as being a function of those frequencies. And so those individuals that you could classify as inhabiting lower frequencies than the general mean frequency of the Earth, which is slightly above the third frequency, probably around 3.35 right now. And we have been higher. We've come down a bit because of things that have been happening around the world. And, this idea to remove or decommune, so to speak. For instance, we have had Brexit. We're talking about Grexit now. The Greeks are thinking about moving away from the European Union. The Catalonians are talking about removing themselves from the Spanish integration. We've had Wales and Scotland and Ireland partially separated or totally separated from the United Kingdom. So all of these things, are based upon low frequency thoughts, behaviours and actions, because we're trying to separate ourselves out again and think of our physical self rather than our greater self, so to speak. So those are the sort of frequencies we're talking about, frequencies that are below the mean of where we are in total on the planet rather than individually. So in real terms, you want to call them hellish because those are frequencies where people think only of themselves as the human being. The area where the ego is in full control is what you would classify as being a very low frequency area, or if you want to call it a hellish region, you can do. And putting or feeling and projecting higher frequency energies into areas where individuals are stuck in these low frequencies for their own thoughts, behaviours and actions is a very good way of helping them and moving forwards. There's another question here surrounding shards. Then this again at the bottom of page 50 on the AND dialogues, and there's a quotation there from saying basically this is going to be a real blow for those who find out they're shards. The question is, so shards can actually become aware that they're shards while they are shards. I assume this is while they are alive as human beings. Is a shard self-aware or is self-awareness common or rare? And can a shard achieve self-awareness before their demise? And if they become self-aware, how might this realization change them? And does all shard awareness cease when their life ends and they become reabsorbed into their projected aspect? The answer to that is there is no reason why a shard can become self-aware in terms of what it is and how it functions, and specifically would be aware of what it is when it is in a projected state but still energetic, rather than being incarnate from the aspect. So being aware while it is an incarnate being, human being, or any other incarnate vehicle that we use across the whole platform or the whole frequency range associated with the physical universe, is a possibility, but not general. I would say it's extremely rare. And if individuals are becoming self-aware and are becoming more aware and are questioning their environment, they are not likely to be a shard. It is very, very unlikely they're a shard, because the level of sentience associated with a shard versus an aspect is significant. It's like 2.5% of 2.5% of the sentience that can be projected into an incarnate vehicle. So it's rather unlikely that anybody who thinks they're a shard or feels they're a shard or has a fear that they're a shard is a shard, to be honest, because that's probably the ego trying to take over and stop them thinking in a high frequency process and make them ignore or reject a higher thought process and a higher state of beingness and put them into a state of depression. So it's likely to be the ego trying to re-establish its control over the incarnate aspect by planting the thought process of the seed that this is a shard. Shards can become self-aware, but it is so unbelievably rare that I've not experienced anybody who's a shard who is interested in spiritual work. Shards can become very famous, of course. They can become very financially or materially successful, but in terms of their ability to become spiritually aware, it's unlikely. Okay. Does shard awareness cease when their life ends and reabsorb back into their projected aspect? The answer is In general, yes. They go back into full communion. It would only be if the aspect requires the individualization of the personality that is created through a specific projection into an incarnate vehicle, because it is useful for further incarnations in the same way that the aspect itself can maintain its individuality within the true energetic self. If the true energetic self wants to maintain that a particular experiential condition that's created through experience, and therefore creates a personality or a level of experience by one part of the sentience, and therefore the energy as well that's been projected into the physical, and wants to maintain that as an individualized state. So it's only if the aspect particularly wants to maintain that level of individuality for that shard that it will stay individualized in some way, shape or form, and then you'll be allowed to go into one of the various different types of communion that are available to it. And we've gone through the states of communion within previous questionnaires, questioning and lectures that I've given. But if you go onto the website and look at the events and then lectures, and you look for the who we are and how we incarnate, you'll find within that particular PDF file towards the end you'll see the various different states of communion there. Okay, so the next question is on page 51, paragraph 4. I see that another quote here. I can still see the fear in the eyes of some shards though. Do you and presumably others have met shards or known shards? And can I tell if somebody's a shard? Does one know this on sight, or does one come by, or does it come by a meditative process? Are you friends with any shards? Yes, I can tell a shard pretty much straight away. I can tell a backfill person pretty much straight away. I don't tend to go around looking for them. I've got a lot of other things that are more important than identifying who's a shard and who isn't a shard. But if I look at somebody and energetically and sentiently, I can tell if they're a shard. Have I met some shards? Yes, I've met a number of shards. Those individuals who are involved in the metaphysical progression or spiritual progressive states of awareness and beingness aren't shards though. So even if somebody thinks they're a shard, that's just the ego trying to frighten them and trying to put them into a state of fear to keep them low frequency, so that the ego can maintain its control. I mean, the fact that a shard, generally loses its individuality upon the demise of the human form would if a shard was self-aware, probably create concern, because the whole point of that is in essence what humans fear the most, which is real and true sort of dissolution, so to speak, complete dissolution of the state of beingness, of oneness, of individuality, of beingness, of sentience. So yes, knowing that you're a shard and knowing that you're more than likely going to lose your personality and everything that was you upon the demise of the physical bodies, but if you're aware of that, would be a bit of a shock, of no doubt. But if you are, as a shard, in a very rare state, if you are being having more thoughtful thoughts and going into the more metaphysical side, then it's rather likely that your aspect may want to maintain you in an individualized state. But again, if you're listening to this recording, you're not a shard. That's not normally what happens. Shards, again, only have 2.5% in general of the 2.5% of the sentience that's projected from the true energetic self to the incarnate vehicle. Okay. So, yes, and my last newsletter mentioned about various different things that are happening with reference to frequencies dropping and certain workshops and things that have become no longer attractional to people. I use my English better, are no longer attractive to people because they're dropping down the frequencies. So, in essence, that those things that are working well are not functioning well, and people aren't becoming more interested in metaphysical things. So, certain workshops that I've done and have been very successful in the past have had to be cancelled at the end of the year, specifically because of lack of interest. But that's because of the way we are. We're dropping down the frequencies. So it's not something I'm concerned about or worried about, although I'm worried about the whole human race, by the way. But it's not going to stop me from being dedicated to what I'm doing, or going to stop my enthusiasm. Moreover, it's going to let me continue to, for want of a better word, keep the logs that are burning, and only throw the odd damp log on the fire rather than lots of damp logs on the fire. Because if you throw lots of damp logs on the fire, you extinguish those logs that are burning. But if you put the odd damp log on the fire, the burning logs dry out the damp log, and that starts to burn as well. So it's all about working with the environment that we're in, understanding what's going on, and doing the best we can to move forwards and keep the high frequencies going. Okay, got a question now from DT, and the first question is, I do have one question for the Origin. The Origin mentioned that it was busy with other projects, and I was wondering what it was up to. I mean, what does the Origin do to keep busy? Thank you for all that you do for us. The Origin is basically investigating its area of polyomniscient sentient self-awareness and expanding it. And by that I mean there's an area that it's aware of. I think I've explained this before. There's an area that it's aware of, and there's an area that it is able to work with in a complete and in-depth way. And what it wants to do is work with that other area that it's aware of, and understand that in a complete and in-depth way. And so that's what it's doing basically. It's doing it with the help of the source entities and ourselves as projected aspects from our true energetic self, and of course those shards that are there as well. And so everything that is in existence is all supporting the Origin in experiencing itself, learning, evolving and progressing. And so as a result of this, the Origin is allowing certain things to happen sort of automatically, because it's created beings to be able to do things for it, but it's also doing its own work and experiencing that which it is. And I'm being told it's also looking at how it can work beyond its current area of polyomniscient sentient self-awareness, and those large pockets within that area, or volume, so to speak, that it's aware of but isn't in full command and control of, or in functionality of, is a better way of saying it. It's like, for instance, we live in an area and we know our location, we know our house, we know particular rooms, we know where everything is in the room mostly, unless we lose something. But the further away from our house we get, like in our garden, we understand where certain plants are, certain trees are, certain shrubs and the earth is. But when we go into the road, we know less about that environment. When we go into the city that our road's in, or the suburb that our road's in, we know less about that. We know less about the city that our suburb's in. And so we know it exists, but we don't know the detail. And what the Origin is trying to do is to establish in more in-depth detail of what it is, even though it is aware of that it is in existence. It wants to know the detail, and that's what it's working on. And then it wants to go to the detail of the next level of itself, because it's aware that this area of self-awareness and with pockets of polyomniscient sentient self-awareness is only a small part of what it really is. And so it is desperate to understand the depth of what it is in this particular volume or area of awareness, and the pockets of polyomniscient sentient self-awareness, and move on to the next level. But that's going to take a lot of evolutionary cycles to go through with our help and our source entity's help. So I hope that answers the question. Okay, There's a question here from EM, a couple of questions actually. Okay, and so I hope you get the question, because my daughter and I seem to go round and round with this particular one. On page 117, we think, in the history of God, touches on it. So what is the purpose of being here, experiencing the human state, to consciously elevate to a higher level? If we came here for the human experience, that contradicts itself, in brackets. This is the issue my daughter is having. And there's a little bit of personal stuff here. I'm not sure if I want to go through it all in per se. Oh, that's not too bad. We can go through it. So she's saying here that she's hung up on right and wrong and on communicating just being, and there is no right and wrong. She says, what if you are here and just want to have the human experience and not seek out an elevated or enlightened state? Are we all coming down here with the intent of awakening to who and what we are, parts of source entity, and then having whatever experience unfolds in that higher state, or coming here to feel what it's like to not remember this higher state? She's saying that the spiritual community is judging the process of enlightening. This is because we're going down the frequencies. The prejudging and judging and recalibrating and calibrating down is a function of going at higher frequencies. So if your purpose is to become enlightened in the physical and you're not doing it, in brackets, your guides, etc., are not nudging you and you're not responding because you're not recognising the message, does that make the trip down here a waste of time? You are not getting your bang for buck, for instance, like the person doing the full bore into the whole spiritual life. And are the individuals that are choosing the path of direct knowing, in brackets, I believe we're all becoming enlightened, even if we're a plumber in Idaho with 5 kids and a drug addict wife, never thinks about the source entity, getting more from this journey than the guy who never opens a spiritual book or listens to a Kevin Moore show, for instance. Well, basically, we do have what could be classified as holiday lives. Difficult to have a holiday life and think it's a holiday. But just being here and experiencing something is an experience. We don't have to be number one or top dog in this, that, or the other. We don't have to become self-aware in a particular incarnation to be experienced, learn, and evolve. I mean, it's nice to become self-aware, and actually, the whole point of mastering the physical and therefore removing our need to be in the physical, to incarnate, is to become self-aware and to continue to become self-aware in successive incarnations, and therefore master being in the physical and therefore not of the physical, and therefore removing the need to be incarnate is what it's all about. But along that particular need, so to speak, there are times when we just come here and just are here. You know? We don't always have to be in the driving seat. We can just be a passenger. And so, in essence, if you think of it in this way, there are times when we are just being the human being. We are just chilling out, having a life which is, if you like, boring, if you want to call it that. But some people would say, well, why would it be boring if you're content? So some people have lives where they're just content. I mean, my mother, for instance, was happy with who she was, with what she was doing, with how she was living, with what she got around her. She, although you could classify as being the typical sort of matriarch of the family, she was the mother. Obviously, myself and my brother, for instance, and my father's wife, was really happy with what she was. She didn't want to have massive amounts of material wealth or status or things around her, or people, coming up to her and asking her for this, that, and the other. She was just happy in being what she was. She was content, and that in itself is another piece of the jigsaw puzzle that gets us onto the state of enlightenment or awareness. Because being content means that you have, again, in another way of considering it, removed yourself from the material addictions of being in the physical world, and as such are mastering the incarnate state and removing yourself from the need to incarnate. So just being here is enough. Just being here and experiencing what you're experiencing in extreme circumstances or limited circumstances is good enough. So again, it's about what you're doing and how you're doing it that matters, not the intensity or the positive and negative, the up and down, left and right, forwards and backwards, the intense need to evolve, the intense need to experience versus the just being happy with the state of what we are. It's unimportant. You know, in this particular incarnation we may be doing this, but next incarnation or previous incarnation we may have been extremely active in our particular life plan, for instance. And so it doesn't really matter. It's just we need to be in acceptance of what we're doing and be happy with what we're doing. And sometimes we go through extreme states of activity in the same incarnation, and then extreme states of inactivity within the same incarnation. And so it's allowing yourself to understand that the extreme states of activity are creative points where we're getting ourselves in a position where we can experience, learn and evolve. And then when we've got no activity, it's allowing us to assimilate and stratify and be that which we've created. So if you like, it's not so much a holiday from a lot of work. It's more experiencing the fruits of your labour, so to speak. Okay. So the next part of it is: can we accumulate karma if we have never been on the earth plane? How do we experience karma in other dimensions? Karma is cause and effect. Not strictly, we know that. So perhaps is it simple as that change? Is there always a change with a thought, so everything is karma? How fun is that? Karma is to do with the attraction and addiction to low frequency thoughts, behaviours and actions. And that can happen in various degrees of addictivity, so to speak, depending upon which frequency you're on within any point of the physical universe. It's just the earth plane, because we've got an individualized free will, it seems to be more easier to become addicted to low frequency thoughts, behaviours and actions than it does anywhere else within the physical universe. So there isn't karma in other dimensions. There's only karma that can be created or addiction to being in a particular level associated with this particular set of frequencies, or the 12 frequencies associated with the physical universe, and therefore the first dimension. So we don't experience karma in other dimensions because we're higher frequency and we understand who and what we are. Very simple. And the karmic aspect of cause and effect is simply one particular function of being in low frequency existence. Okay. There's another part of this. I wanted to ask if it's possible, or will it ever be possible, for any of the other source entities to visit our universe? Yeah, there are aspects of, or smaller individualized aspects of every source entity, apart from source entity 12, that I'm aware of, that have visited and been part of the multiversal environments of this particular source entity and other the environments or the creations of other source entities as well. So and some of these are ascended masters, what we would call ascended masters, and there are 12 major ascended masters that are associated with, if you like, source entities. I'm not talking about particularly source entity 12 here, although so arguably you could say there's 10 plus 2 associated with our source entity, in my understanding. There's other ascended masters as well, or individuals that are classified as ascended masters that have experienced all sorts of different aspects of the multiverse, including the physical, and they tend to be disassociated from the karmic state. So even though they're in the physical, they're not of it, and you can see from various historical, when they're particularly accurate, references to individuals who seem to be otherworldly, I mean totally otherworldly, and those would have been those ascended masters, or those individualized aspects from other source entities. And so that's another question here. What I'm finding here is that each one of us is having a similar experience here and everywhere throughout thousands and thousands of blinks, so to speak, or points of existence or reference or notional experience into other dimensions and realities. I think we have trouble in communicating well because of this. Well, we do, because we're low frequency here. So I'm just trying to be and enjoy the ride. And again, this thing about karma. This is karma. The idea of what karma is or isn't seems to be shifting for me. Does that appear to happen at a higher consciousness? Yes, it does. When we understand what karma is, we are also understanding how to experience, learn and evolve in an environment where we can get addicted to it. And EM is basically referring to page 117, the history of God. So just be, no matter what that looks like, no good, no bad, or no judgment. It's just, that's what it is. So if I was attached to a meaning, so if I attached a meaning to something, it creates. And now I postulated karma. No, not really. If you are addicted to that thought process or that meaningness, then it's that particular thought process of meaningness is attributed to the low frequencies of this environment, then yes, you could classify it as being karma in a very loose sense and very sort of fine sense. But basically, if you're able to think of it, consider it, and then move on to a higher concept, then it's not karmic at all. Well, that's a whole group of questions there, and I'm really grateful for those people who have given us those questions, which are US, WP, JM, DT and EM. Thank you very much for those questions. They're very urgent questions. And as always, by the way, I don't tend to read through these questions until I'm doing the recording, because I like to get the information channeled directly and not involve the human thought process of consideration. Although consideration is another way of detaching ourselves from the physical. It allows the instantaneousness of communication with the greater reality and source to be able to give the answers to the questions. And sometimes that results in a bit of me rambling on. So you have to apologise. Well, also you have to accept my apology there for that. So the next part of this particular Satsanga is to go through the final end of Satsanga meditation. And what I said we would do is to have a meditation on communicating with and experiencing our true sentient self. So if you haven't already done so, find yourself a straight backed chair, okay, or a place where you can sit down cross-legged. You don't have to be in lotus position, although the full lotus position does lock the back in a straight way, so that the energy flows up and down the spine quite freely, rather than being or experiencing resistance through a bent spine. Okay, but most individuals in the Western world, and of course everywhere else, can experience the same level of connectivity through being in a straight-backed chair, with the back straight, the feet flat on the ground, the palms placed uppermost on the upper thighs, just the interface with the legs meet the lower part of the body. Back is straight, head is positioned straight on the spine, eyes are closed, and the closed eye vision is focused on the point of origin of the third eye, not the third eye chakra, which is different. Okay, so it's in between the two eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose. What I want you to do now is just to consider that you are a projected, individualized piece of sentient energy, which is exactly what you are. And that projection, of course, is in the energies associated with the gross physical, spiritual physical, and energetic human form.
to detach ourselves from that momentarily and go back into our true energetic self, and then we'll go into the true sentient self. I want you to just visualize or feel that you're pulling all of the energies in from the extremities of the body. These are the fingers, the toes, the head, the ears, the nose. Okay. All towards the core of your body. So let's start with the head. The energy associated with the head moves down the back of the head to the spine, go down to the point of energy just behind on the horror line. The horror line goes down through a location close to the crown chakra, comes down through the plexuses associated with the energetic junctions of the chakras, goes down to the pelvis and then splits out into two and goes down each leg, where it connects with the low frequencies associated with the manifestation in this physical universe that we call the Earth. So it connects us to this particular location. So allow the energies of the head to migrate down the spine and just stop at a point just behind the heart chakra, just in the center of the body, but in the height of the center point of the sternum, that part of the body where the left and right hand aspects of our ribcage joins together. Just there. And then have the energies associated with your fingers, and the palms of your hands and the arms, and the upper arms and the shoulders also travel upwards, going down to the horror line and sit at this point just behind the heart chakra. And then finally do the same thing again with the energies in the feet, the toes, the feet, the ankles, the calves, the lower legs, the knees, the upper legs, the thighs, up to the pelvis, and join together round about the area of the sacral chakra. They move up again to this point just behind the heart chakra. And so all of our energy and sentience associated with the ability to animate our body, our gross physical form, is now sitting behind this area behind the heart chakra, which is called the soul seat. It's the soul seat because it's the area where the sentience is associated with the aspect, the incarnate aspect is located. Tantien is where the energy that is used to animate the human form sits. It's the distribution point, the major distribution point of all energies. It's that part of the body where the sentience controls the rest of the body. Because we're not removing our energies from the rest of the body per se, we're leaving it in the Tantien area, which is 3 inches above the navel and 3 inches in towards the centre of the body. We're going to move our sentience up from the soul seat. It's pointed in the centre of the body, but behind the location of the solar plexus, part of the rib cage where the left hand and right hand aspect of rib cage join together, and allow this sentience, this bright bluey, whitey, silvery energy that we call the soul seat, to move away from that area. So the soul, or the sentience, moves away from the location that we call the soul seat and starts to move up through the hara line. If you remember, the hara line is a small energetic tube or vortex that allows the continued connectivity between the incarnate aspect and the true energetic self is projected from. So our sentience moves up this tube, this protective tube that protects us from the lowest frequencies associated with the physical universe. Moving up this tube, moving upwards and upwards, up the frequencies, that is. So we move out of the frequencies. We've gone up the fourth frequency, which is around the area of the heart chakra. The fifth, we've moved up through the sixth and the seventh, and then the step down functions associated with the eighth, ninth, and 10th frequency. Then we move up this higher line, up through the frequencies, the location of the true energetic self. The true energetic self will be located at a frequency within the multiverse that is equal to its evolutionary level. So once we move up through this higher line and move up to whatever frequency level our true energetic self is at, we start to see our true energetic self as this huge, immense ball of, or sphere of energy, sentient energy. We move closer and closer to this sphere, this ball, and it becomes more and more detailed as we get towards it. And then as we get closer to this ball of energy, this sphere of energy, we become connected to it and inside it. We are this bluey, silvery, whitey ball of energy. And our connectivity increases so we know everything about what we've experienced, what we've learned from, and how we've evolved. From here, in my visualization, ball of, or sphere of energy looks like a spherical cloud, so to speak. And inside there's lots of little lights, red lights, blue lights, white lights, green lights, yellow lights. They move around, bounce around the inside of this sphere. These lights within this sphere, this cloudy sphere, represents the sentience that is associated with this energy. The cloudy sphere is the energy, the body of energy, which is either given to us by source, or that or our sentience may move away from it and commandeer its own body of energy, should you decide to do so. The body of energy, in any case, changes with every evolutionary cycle. So this body of energy that we're seeing here, that's housing our sentience, is only a temporary location for our sentience. So, in this ball of cloud, sphere of cloud, we are part of these bright lights that is yellow, and blue and red and silver and white, lights bouncing around inside. We are one of those bright lights bouncing around inside this cloudy sphere. These lights are the sentience. The cloudy sphere is the energy that the sentience is using to experience the frequencies associated with multiverse. To experience it in the way it's supposed to be experienced, by being part of that particular level and working with it. Ask to commune with these lights, these aspects of sentience that are darting around inside this cloudy sphere. Coalesce together with them. Be in communion with them. Be one with them, so there is no one or other. There just is. Feel the connectivity, feel the expansion. All of a sudden, you can feel that you know everything. You feel that you've experienced everything. You're aware of everything. You can communicate with everything. Nothing is an issue. Nothing is a problem. Everything just is. Now, temporarily suggest to the rest of the sentience that you move out of this body of energy that you're using to experience, learn and evolve during this evolutionary cycle within this particular multiversal environment. And you move out of this sticky, cloudy sphere, and all of a sudden you're free. You are simply coalescing sentience, sparks of different coloured light. Don't forget, colour actually doesn't exist. Colour is a function of low frequency physics. It's a function of low frequenciness, something the human eye picks up. But it's a good description for us to help work with what we're doing here. Move your sentience out of this cloudy sphere. Feel free. You are now what's a better word? Inter-energetic. Outside of the structure of that which you are. You are in a free zone. An area where energy is but you're not part of that energy. You're in the gaps between the energy. You are pure sentience. Be aware of your sentient state. Feel yourself. Realize that there's no limitations. There is just anything and everything can happen in an instant. There's no need for any association with energy. You're instantly one with everything, beyond just your sentience that is you and your true sentient self. This separation of the collective sentience associated with the body of energy that creates the combination of sentience and energy that is the true energetic self creates that which is the true sentient self. That which you truly are. Just pure sentience. Enjoy the detachment, the limitations associated with energy. We'll just sit here for a moment in this detached state, pure sentience, sentience detached from energy. Feel how high you feel frequentially. You're not associated with any structure. You're just sentience. Don't worry if you feel a little bit lightheaded or detached or out of control. You just have to think about being focused, and you are. Okay, so let's think about becoming reattached to our body of energy that was given to us by Source to house our sentience, and move back towards this cloudy sphere which looks dull and grey because the sentience associated with it is no longer there, so it's just simply energy. We move into it, feels like cotton wool in comparison to where we've just been, and all of a sudden it lights up as the sentience that is us moves around and darts around it. the little aspect of sentience associated with our aspect, that which has been projected from the true energy itself, now separates itself out by going back to the Hara line, the little vortex or tube of energy that protects the frequencies associated with the true energy itself and the sentience on the frequential level that it is associated with its evolution. Is now available for us to move into, and the sentience and the energy associated with the true energy itself moves back down the Hara line, going down the frequencies from whichever level of frequency your true energy itself has achieved as a result of its evolution. Moves down the frequencies, starts to enter into the step down function associated with the 10th and 9th and 8th frequencies. And then comes down into the spiritual physical aspect of the human form by moving through the Hara line that goes through the crown area of the head and moves down through the neck area and finally stops in this area of the soul seat, which is at the junction of the front and rear aspects of the heart chakra, around that area. We re-establish our energetic command by re-associating the sentience with the energies within the Tantien. So the energy moves back into the legs, through the pelvis, down through the femurs and the knees, and the lower legs, calves, the ankles, the feet and the toes. It spreads out again, back up, through to the shoulders, through the body to the shoulders, down to the upper arms and the elbows, and the forearms, and the wrists, and the palms of the hands and the fingers and the tips of the fingers. And continues upwards through the neck, through the centre of the head, the jaw, up towards the top of the crown chakra. And so the sentience now is connected to the energies that pervade the body and control the body and allow it to be animated, the gross physical body and the energy bodies associated with the spiritual physical as well. So you can come slowly back into the room, very slowly open your eyes. If you wish, you can take a drink of water to help ground yourself. Okay, so that's the end of this particular meditation and the end of this particular Satsanga. I'm just going to establish when the next Satsanga is in November. Very gently come back out of this meditation. It's been quite a profound meditation, so just take your time having some water as well. And so let's look at this next satsang is going to be on a Thursday, the 30th of November, specifically because I'm away on an investigative, research-based trip. So it'll be the Thursday, the 30th of November, okay, in this particular instance. So, much love to you all. Thank you very much for listening to this particular Satsanga and taking part, and
being part of the energies associated with particular event space as well. And thanks again for Kevin for broadcasting this when he does. And enjoy the rest of the weekend. And God's love to you all, sources love, origins love, and my love to you all. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Did you see the aliens in Crete?